I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and welcome to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I am hopefully here with my wonderful co-host. Okay, well, hopefully she'll get back on in not too long of a time, but Rebecca Wood should be joining us. And you have joined us for a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. We talk about them in terms of your wealth, your health, your happiness, how it affects you, your family, your friends, your pets. Because really all stories, when you come right down to it, are environmental stories, ecological stories, because we have ecology is what supports all of us. Environment is what, it's not just a story that's out there, it's not just a subject separate from everything else. Ecology and environment is everything else. And ultimately, I think I call it the queen of the sciences because it incorporates all of the other sciences, and all information can be sort of put into an ecological and environmental context. And, this week we're once again broadcasting from our living rooms. Hopefully Rebecca will be joining us soon. And, hey, Rebecca, are you here? Oh, okay. So, as I've said in the previous weeks, we've been doing this from the lockdown, that it's hard to get that sort of edge you get when you come into the studio, because, you walk into the studio and in the spacious lobby there, they've got the ferns and the fountains, and I often pause underneath the statue of Edgar R. Murrow, that great reporter from World War II and through the 50s, who inspired so many journalists throughout the years. And, I'll sit there at the foot of that statue for a little while and just think about what a wonderful task we're getting ready to do when we go in to do the show. And, it's hard to do that in my living room, so to kind of get back a little bit of that edge there, per Rebecca's request from last week, I'm once again in my maroon tuxedo and all dressed up and ready to go here. So let's get right to it. One thing I wanted to talk about this week was about something we did last week. And for those of you who didn't catch the show last week, we made a demonstration of exponential growth. And that is that we started out with a single quarter in the first minute of the show. We put 1 quarter on my desk. And then in minute 2, we doubled that, 2 quarters. Minute 3, we doubled that again, 4, and then 8 and 16. And every minute of the show, we doubled that stack of quarters. And it's a 60-minute show. And I had to invent some technology. We had some drones that were stacking the quarter up when it got higher than the house. And then we had some faster than light drones when it was getting really big. And I just wanted to say, because the quarters were growing so quickly, the stack was growing so fast that I actually had trouble keeping up with it as I was reporting it. And I just wanted to point out that at the end of the show, at minute 60, we had started out with one quarter. At minute 60, we had 576 trillion quarters stacked up. The stack was 627 billion miles high. That means it was sticking out of the other side of the Oort cloud. And it was just an amazing demonstration of exponential growth. And so the people that are talking about opening up the economy again, of just essentially saying, okay, we've beaten it, time to just start acting normal, they are lacking in understanding of exponential growth, because if we just go back to normal now, the exponential growth will start back up again. And that is something we cannot afford to do with our lives, with the lives of our loved ones. And so I hope you could take a lesson from those quarters. And if you haven't done it, you can go back and watch the YouTube video of the stack of quarters growing. It's really quite awe-inspiring, I must say. But that was last week, and this week is kind of important because this Wednesday, April 22nd, is Earth Day. And Earth Day is my favorite holiday. It's the holiday where everybody can celebrate it, everybody can participate. And that was the idea that Gaylord Nelson had way back when he set up the first Earth Day in 1970. Yeah, this is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And I remember the very first Earth Day. I was only 7 years old at the time, but I went out and I got some garbage bags and I went out to our local field and I just picked up all the trash I could find in that field. And I was amazed at how quickly I filled a garbage bag with that trash. There was to realize it until I started to clean it up. And so what I'm asking and what I'm hoping you guys will share with us at 866-240-1065 here on The Ticket. Please give a call in and tell us how you intend to celebrate Earth Day. Normally, and this is one of the highlights of my year, normally I have a big Earth Day party at my house every year, and I invite my friends and I invite everybody on the street, because one of the things about Earth Day is that you're supposed to be looking at your environment, and the people who live in your neighborhood are part of your environment. They're part of what can determine your health, because if you have nice neighbors and you get along well with them, you can actually live longer. There's been studies that show, and they go the other way too. So every April 22nd, I invite all my neighbors over to the house. We have a nice Earth Day party, and what we ask people to do is to just bring something natural, and then we let them decide what that means, whether that's a dish that's made all organic or whether it's vegan or, whatever they want, however they want to define natural. And we have a big potluck, and it's great. But this year, we have the problem where we can't invite people over to the house. So instead, what we're asking, and what a lot of organizations are asking people to do for Earth Day this year, rather than get together in big groups, rather than have big protests and fairs and so forth, people are being asked to do one concrete thing for the environment. And so that's my question to you today. And please call in at 866-240-1065 with your answer. What do you intend to do for Earth Day? What's one thing that you want to do to celebrate this holiday? And it could be something as simple as making a call to your congressman, telling him don't let the EPA suspend enforcement of all the environmental rules during COVID. It could be something like starting a compost heap. That's something that a lot of people have always been meaning to do, is to start composting. And maybe this is the year. Maybe on Wednesday, April 22nd, you will go out into your yard or wherever and start that composting. Let me know. And, of course, you can always call in at any time with any kind of question on any environmental issue. And Rebecca and I will be happy to field that question. You know, if you've come across any story during the week about the environment, about ecology, and you have some questions about it, we will be happy to help you answer those questions. So we've got a great show coming up. In just a minute or two, we're going to have our guest this week, his name is Jeff Norden. And Jeff Norden is the owner of AIM E-Cycling. He's going to tell us all about his business. Then, of course, we'll hear from our wonderful, wonderful sponsors. And then we're going to have some eco news that you could use and do a little bit of bragging, actually, about our show, because we've been growing. We've been getting more people watching, more people listening. And I have a nice number that we got that I want to share with you in the second half of the show. And, of course, as always, our letter from the future is on its way. Actually, it already arrived this morning. There was that flash of photons next to my bed, and there was a letter from the future, which we'll be reading later on in the show. So the question today for callers is, what are you going to do for Earth Day? And I think that it's an important holiday to remember. It's an important. Maybe you just want to go for a walk. You know, that would be a perfectly appropriate thing to do on Earth Day, and enjoy these clear, these blue skies. I think I've said it before, but the sky, in my experience, hasn't been this shade of blue, this really blue, since I was a kid, since I was a young lad in the 70s. So let me know, 866-240-1065. All right, well, we have reached that point in the show, and hopefully Rebecca will be able to join us soon. We've reached the point in the show where we bring our guest on, and we're very happy to have with us today Jeff Norden from AIM E-Cycling. Jeff, are you on the line?
Yeah, how are you, Joe?
I'm well, thank you very much. So one of the things my family's been doing since we're stuck here in the house with each other is we've been doing some cleaning. We've been doing some emptying out of stuff. We've getting rid of some things that we've just sort of hung on to. And one of the things that we got rid of this week were some old printers that we had, because I have a very difficult time letting go of any electronics. I have to confess I still have every computer I've ever owned, whether it works or not. But these printers, I was willing to let go of them, and so we were searching around, and we found your business, AIM E-Cycling. And it turns out that you folks can take things like old printers and recycle them. So could you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah, we've been in business since 2008. We recycle computers and electronics. We are an R2 certified company, which we're the only one in Northwest Ohio that has that certification. And R2 just stands for responsible recycling. And what is entailed with that, they come in and audit us every year, and they have 5 focus materials that we have to show the downstream all the way to the end of life. And some of those focus materials are circuit boards, batteries, anything containing mercury, CRT monitors and TVs, and anything containing PCBs, excuse me. So we have to prove the downstream that all of that material is handled correctly all the way to the end of life. And so R2 has some standards that they go through and evaluate, and we have to comply to all those. And then it also entails ISO 14001 certification and the OHSAS 18001, which is health and safety. So
okay, so
you know,
so the organization that certifies you is R2. That's the name of the organization.
R2/SERI, SERI. And so SERI is the governing body for R2. And they have independent auditors companies that come out and do this certification. So some of the other things that they check for. So obviously data protection is paramount. So when we get a computer in, the first thing we do is pull out the hard drive. The hard drive is either, we have a machine that can wipe 45 hard drives at a time, and they use a program that was designed by the Department of Defense that does 3 passes over the hard drive to wipe it. If that hard drive would fail that process, that the sector is bad, then we physically take the hard drive and destroy it. So when R2 comes in to do this audit, one of the things they do is they pull some of the hard drives that we have said that we have wiped, and they take those and do forensics to see if they can recover any data from that. And so we've been certified R2 since 2013, and they have never found any data that has still lingered on those hard drives.
Oh, that's great.
So I guess, so getting, I guess, to your theme of this show with Earth Day, obviously that's, this Wednesday. And so usually this time of year is very busy for us. We would have kicked off the events that we do, but obviously they've been canceled because of the COVID. This Saturday, yesterday, would have been an event with Habitat for Humanity, where we have a drive up session where people can just drive in, drop off their equipment, and there's no charge. The only thing we don't take are the CRT tubed televisions or monitors and anything that contains Freon, because we do not have an evacuator to safely remove the Freon. So that would have been last Saturday. This Saturday would have been the Party for the Planet at the Zoo, which has obviously been delayed. So, and then we partner with Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful, and every councilman in the city of Toledo has an event on Saturday that you can go and drop off your equipment. And that schedule, if you want to look that up, is on the Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful website, and it will be on our website. We took it down because everything has changed till we get dates arranged. So, that helps people have a place to drop that stuff off, and you can always come and drop off at our facility Monday through Friday from 8 till 4.
Okay, yeah. So your facility, you're located out there on it's Opportunity Drive, I guess?
Yeah, 5656 Opportunity Drive, which is just off of Alexis Road between Jackman and Lewis, near the powertrain plant.
Right, okay. So if the one thing people decide to do for Earth Day this year is to finally, deal with that pile of old computers and old printers they've got hanging around, how much of a computer, for example, a laptop, let's say, can be recycled, and how much of it, ends up going to the landfill?
None of it will go to the landfill if you bring it to our facility. That's part of the R2 is zero landfill. So what the process is, Joe, when we get, say, a computer or a laptop in, the first thing you want to do, the hierarchy of recycling is reduce, reuse, recycle. So we have some techs, and what they're going to do is we're going to try to refurbish that equipment if possible. And then if the equipment is not refurbishable, then we break it down. And so for a computer, let's say, we'll go back to the breakdown table. They'll take out the power supply. They'll take out the disk drives. They'll take out the wiring. They'll take out the circuit board. And then off the circuit board, they have a little button battery, lithium-ion button battery, and that's one of the focus materials that we have to, correctly dispose of. And so all that stuff gets broken down, and then that equipment gets sold to customers that are buying it for commodity value, and they have these huge shredders that they would run that through, and those shredders will separate the plastic and the ferrous and non-ferrous materials, and then all that stuff then will be recycled again. So, the only thing you'll find in our dumpster there is maybe packing material and the bags from the food that the employees eat at lunch. Especially now, it seems like Grubhub and all those are delivering to our facility for everybody for lunch right now. So not a lot of people are going out to get their lunch.
Well, that's wonderful because, I think that, I'll ask you to speak to this too. Some people make the claim that recycling is almost a scam because it kind of makes it allows us to continue to do things in an unsustainable manner. But it seems to me that recycling has to be part of a sustainable resource cycle. So, what would you say to those people that are telling everybody, "Oh, don't recycle. It's a scam"?
Well, just some facts that I have here for you. They've come out with a fact that they believe that every person has 15 pounds of electronic equipment. Every person in the world, and of that, only 12.5 to 15% of that is being recycled. 70% of that is still going to landfills. So, that's a pretty huge number, considering the push that's went on for people to recycle. That people are sort of, don't think that that's important. And another statistic is that they mine 3,000 metric tons of gold every year. And of that 3,000 metric tons, 300 of those metric tons are used in the electronic equipment that they are building new. And now they are finding out that they're calling it urban mining, that companies are actually going into the landfill, since there are 70% of the electronics are still going to landfills, and mining that, and they're recovering about 1,000 metric tons a year to recycle out of the landfills, which is, that's a huge number, a third of what they're actually pulling out of the ground. And they're doing this for two reasons. Obviously, it will be more cost effective for them to get it out of the landfill, and it's more safe than sending people down in the mines. That's a dangerous proposition. So there's a lot more going on maybe behind the scenes than people realize. But I think it's very important that if something can be reused, let's do that.
Is that why you got into this business in the first place, because of that belief?
Well, it's a long story. It'll probably take a whole other show, but real quickly, we started out as a document shredding company. We bought a mobile shred truck, and we, shred people's documents. And very quickly, customers were asking us, "Can you get rid of our computers for us? Can you destroy our hard drives and make sure that the data is secure?" And so we looked into that, and we got certified, got the R2 certification, and we sold the shredding part of the business, because by the time we sold that, 80% of our business was doing electronic recycling. So it sort of just evolved. But I had worked for Allied Waste before then, and I just, everybody just wanted to jam the landfill full, and they were always saying, that, the landfill's going to, be full in 10 years if we don't stop this, but they didn't seem to be doing anything to try to stop the intake of what was coming in. So I felt recycling should be an important step in that.
All right. Well, I agree. How would you say that the industry that you're in, statewide or nationwide, is that growing, or are there about the same number of companies doing this? Are there more companies doing it now than when you started, or how's it going trend-wise?
I would say it's pretty close to being the same. There has been some people, get into the business, but it's leveled off, I think, a little bit, because it's more work if you're doing it correctly. And there are people that will say that they use R2 certificate or R2 guidelines, but if you don't have anybody to actually come audit you to prove that you're doing those, are you really doing the right thing? So that's why it's important to make sure you have somebody that's certified to handle your equipment, because there are a lot of things that have went wrong, especially with the CRT, which are the cathode ray tubes. in the old television and stuff, a lot of mishandling of that. So you just want to make sure that the people that are handling it correctly.
Right. Now, I see that you folks don't take CRTs or televisions anymore. Why is that?
Well, leading back to that, there was a lot of people mishandling that equipment, and so now there have been several lawsuits of people that claim they were handling it right that didn't, and so the cost has become so prohibited to make sure you're getting it correctly recycled that it's just the chance of being in a lawsuit over this stuff is not worth the risk of taking in the equipment anymore.
That's terrible. Hopefully that we can change that situation at some point, because I firmly believe that our show is for a green future, and I think that in a green future we have to have closed all these resource loops, that we have to stop those mining practices and just reuse what we've already taken out, because I haven't done a show on gold mining yet, but gold mining is one of the most environmentally destructive things that humans do. It's kind of amazing. You first you grind up a mountain, and then you spray it with cyanide, and you make this huge lake of cyanide, and then you filter what leaches out of it to get the gold, and that's just... So I'm glad you folks are there, saving some of that gold and recycling the whole process. All right, well, thanks so much, Jeff, for joining us. This has been great. So
I appreciate the opportunity, Joe. Thank you.
Great. So if people want more information about what you folks are doing, how would they find that?
Our website is www.aimecycling.com, and that's spelled AIMECYCLING.com, or they can call us at 419-517-2055.
All right. Well, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. Have a great day.
You too. Bye. That was Jeff Norden, and we're very happy to have him on. And Rebecca is frantically trying to get on. She's sending me text messages. Unfortunately, I can't go there and help her. She's on her own. We're all kind of on our own here in our own living rooms, and I think she actually put herself in her closet today, because when she was on last week, we had a lot of background noise, and I think she kind of locked herself in a little space. I don't know what the problem is, but we're hoping Rebecca gets back on very soon. But what we have right now is our wonderful sponsors, those who make it possible for us to bring you For a Green Future every Sunday. And one of our sponsors is the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces. They provide engaging programming that teaches people to love and respect nature. They help restore wildlife habitats, and they lead people on outdoor adventures. The Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's several ways you can check out Wood County Parks. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. You can check out their website, which is wcparks.org. And finally, they have this cool app, and you just go to the App Store and download WC Parks is the app. And one of the cool features of WC Parks is that you can upload pictures at any time. So if you're out on a hike, you can take a picture and upload it for other people to enjoy. So that's the Wood County Park District. For a Green Future is also brought to you by our patrons. And these are people who've gone to patreon.com, and they've searched for a Green Future, and our little Patreon page popped up, and they chose a level of membership. There's a level to meet every budget, and they signed up for a monthly donation that comes out of their checkbook. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to think about it. except every week when they hear the show, they can think, hey, that's great. I'm helping make that happen. And so we encourage people to follow their example. So if you want to do that, you go to patreon.com and just search for a Green Future. And we are extremely grateful for our patrons. They're the ones that are helping keeping the show on the air. So now we come to the part of the show where we talk about environmental news and information. And please feel free to hop in at any time at 866-240-1065, the ticket. I know that, I'm glad we got a lead in from Black and White Sports this week. It was, it was kind of lonely being the first show out, when I like that program. I like to listen to those guys, and it's good that things are sort of getting back to normal, but we have to be careful. We can't break up this in-home. We can't break up the isolation, the social isolation, too soon, or else we're all going to be in a lot of trouble. But there are other things going on in the environment, in environmental news. And unfortunately, one of them, this is an update on a story we reported on last week. One of them is that Chernobyl is burning again. And Chernobyl, the forests around Chernobyl, have been growing wild since that accident. And there's the problem with the contamination that came from the Chernobyl plant that made those areas too radioactive for humans to live in. The problem when you get a forest fire is that it takes a lot of that radiation and puts it right back up into the air. And so people downwind from the smoke, they inhale smoke particles. The smoke particles could include things like plutonium that would then cause them lung cancer. It's sort of like the Chernobyl disaster is happening all over again. It's literally the ghost of Chernobyl has come to haunt Europe again. And one reason this is such an interesting story is that there shouldn't be forest fires in the Ukraine in April. The Ukraine is a cool area. It's not a hot, dry climate. And the fact that there's forest fires there now, it's sort of the intersection of global warming and the disaster and the nuclear disaster, because the climate is changing and it's more likely to have forest fires. And so that worsens the effects of nuclear disasters like Fukushima, like Chernobyl. And it's just a terrible, terrible story. And there were a number of firefighters out there in the Ukraine who have been out there battling these blazes. And they're poorly equipped. They don't have things like respirators and gas masks. And so they're just inhaling this radioactive smoke. And some number of these brave men are going to die because they've been exposed to radiation from Chernobyl. And that's the terrible thing. That's the reason that we environmentalists are so down on nuclear power, is that short term, while the plant is running, you've got all that radioactivity contained inside those big cement walls. Hey, we're getting electricity. It's great. But the fact that you're creating radiation, that's radioactive pollution that's going to be killing people for literally millions of years, nothing excuses that. No use that you're putting that electricity to is worth burdening people with that. And what's happening to the firefighters and the people of the Ukraine, this is just a tiny taste of what's going to be happening over eons. And this radiation will get dispersed out into the environment, and it will be affecting people and plants and animals and every living thing all over the planet for those millions of years. And so the evil being created by nuclear power just outweighs the tiny little benefit people in our generation get from it, and it's just an embarrassment. So anyway, Chernobyl's burning again, and We don't know what's going to happen. We're just going to have to keep watching those fires and praying for those firefighters. One thing about this whole COVID crisis, and this is not something that the way it's happening is not good, but the fact that it's happening is good, and that is that there has been so far a 5% drop in carbon emissions worldwide, and that is roughly a drop of 2.5 billion tons of carbon. And I've seen various graphs on this, and the unfortunate thing is that those graphs have been showing that exponential growth curve. Even over the past 10 years, even as we have learned that carbon emissions are causing the climate change, the global warming that's destroying so many aspects of our environment, we've continued to accelerate the rate at which we put carbon into the air until this year. And, there have been drops in the past. There have been things. There's a graph from Statista, and it shows that there were drops in 2008 when we had a global recession. There was a drop back in World War II when there was no industry except for war, and so there was also a drop of carbon there. But this 5% drop, this drop of 2.5 billion tons of carbon going into the air this year, that's an estimate. That is the biggest drop since we started using carbon. And it's the kind of drop that we need to do every year in order to prevent complete climate collapse in the coming years. Of course, we don't want to do it the way we're doing it. We don't want to do it by simply shutting everything down and throwing people out of work and having people have to shelter in their homes, self-isolate. We want to do it by switching over to public transportation, by working out of the home, need all these huge office buildings and all these huge gatherings of people just to get the business of keeping ourselves fed and clothed and entertained. So we need to switch over to this more of a telecommuting mindset. We have to do things more from a distance and from home, but we don't need to destroy the economy in order to do it. So don't think that us environmentalists are happy about destroying the economy. No, we're happy that there is a carbon drop, but we need to have that carbon drop without destroying everything else. Just some quick numbers from that Statista graph. Right now, the estimate is the 2.5 billion tons. The global recession of 2009, it was a reduction of 300 million tons. 1983, we had a recession. It was a drop of 1 billion tons. 75, 100 million, and 1945, World War II, or the end of World War II specifically, when all the war stuff ended, and then before we ramped up the manufacturing, that was 750 million ton reduction. But this reduction is the greatest so far, and we need to keep the reduction and lose the virus. That's what has to happen. So that was an important bit of news. One thing, important little bit of news for us here at For a Green Future, one thing I kind of want to brag about, is that our show has been, since the start of this year, has been consistently in the top 100 podcasts. We rebroadcast as a podcast on Podomatic, and For a Green Future has been in the top 100 since the start of this year on the news category. Okay, not top, we're not competing with J-Lo and Usher and all that right now, but as a news podcast, we have been in the top 100, and this past week, we were number 69 and that's out of thousands and thousands of newscast category podcasts. So we're very grateful for our listeners who listen through the podcast and listen on the internet, and I feel like we can get up there into the top 10, which, this show, I like to say this is the best show in Ohio, but it does get better every time you call. And it's still not too late to call in at 866-240-1065. Question of the week is, what are you going to do for Earth Day? And but of course we can talk about anything that you like, any environmental topic. We're more than happy to dive into it. All right, another piece of news here is that this is from The Guardian, and it's a story that ran yesterday. And the story is that 29 Nobel laureates have joined together and are attacking Chevron, the oil company Chevron, because that company has been persecuting an environmental lawyer named Stephen Donziger. And Stephen Donziger is a lawyer who went after Chevron because in 1993 they were destroying Ecuadorian forests and farms with their oil extraction. And he put together a class action suit. 30,000 people joined in. These are indigenous people and small farmers. And they won in Ecuadorian courts. They won a $9.5 billion lawsuit against Chevron. Unfortunately, that Chevron, rather than pay this judgment in the Ecuadorian courts, instead personally went after this lawyer, this Stephen Donziger. And so these Nobel laureates have gotten together and they're saying, this is wrong. This should not be happening. But they've done things like required him, even after the case was thrown out of U.S. courts, there was a judge, his name was Kaplan, demanded Donziger's private personal electronics. They wanted his cell phone and his computer. They wanted all the details about who he talked to in Ecuador and what was going on. And so he refused to give it up. But so Kaplan basically put him on house arrest with an ankle bracelet, and Chevron has filed lawsuits against him. And what these Nobel laureates and what many other human rights workers are saying, human rights organizations are saying, is that this is an example of what's called a SLAP, which is an SLAPP, which is strategic lawsuits against public participation. And that is when a company like Chevron, who's in the wrong, who did something evil, like polluting all the fields and all the forests down there in Ecuador, hunting for oil, rather than admit the problem, rather than owning up to the evil they've done, they go after the people that are trying to hold them accountable. They personally attack them. They try to take their homes. They try to ruin their lives, and in every possible way, both professionally and personally. And one of the key tools is these SLAP lawsuits, strategic lawsuits against public participation. And it's just evil. And so here's the case. We like to feel ourselves in the U.S. that we have this healthy democracy, that things like the persecution of environmental activists, that's happening over in other countries, poor countries, places where the democracy is not so strong. But no, sadly, according to these Nobel laureates, it is happening right here in the United States of America. So that's an important story for us to be aware of, and something to harangue Chevron about. This is just terrible. All right. On a slightly lighter note, there's been a lot of reports in the media that animals are taking over now that humans are relegating themselves to their houses. I'm sure you've seen pictures on the internet of lions laying down across highways. And have you seen any examples of that? We still have time for a couple calls. at 866-240-1065. Have you seen an example of here in Ohio, Northwest Ohio or Michigan, of animals that normally you don't see in the daytime just boldly out there, maybe in a lawn or walking down a street? Give us a call, 866-240-1065. And I saw something when my wife and I were out walking here in Bowling Green. A duck had taken over the parking lot at the Stone's Throw restaurant, and he was just sitting there, right plunked down right in the middle of the parking lot, just neat as you please, say, this is my territory now. I think he was trying to attract a mate, actually, with his cool bar side territory, but we'll see. But yeah, so that's been a big eco story in the news. The animals are just, saying, hey, we can go back finally. And so that's a nice thing. But again, environmentalists, we don't want to see that at the cost of humans. We don't want our economy and our personal livelihoods and our lives to be destroyed in order to benefit the environment. But I guess we could sort of take silver lining. We can sort of say it's nice that the environment is benefiting from this reduction in pollution. So one kind of pollution that isn't reducing much, though, is nuclear pollution. And there's a story which doesn't exactly, you don't immediately think it's an environmental story, but it is. And that is that the aircraft carrier where so many sailors started coming down with COVID, there was a study that came out that it turns out that it was the workers in the nuclear part of the aircraft carrier, the ones running the reactor that keeps the aircraft carrier going, they're the ones who got hit with COVID first, and they're the ones that got hit the hardest. And there's several reasons for that. One is that nuclear power plant workers often have to work very tight quarters in order to keep those reactors running. And we talked about that a lot last week. We don't need except to say that more and more nuke plants are now reporting that more and more of their workers are getting sick. And as we know, the NRC's response to that is to say, oh, okay, nuke plants, well, then you could just have your couple of remaining healthy workers and you just work them longer, but keep those nukes running, and which is a mistake. But the other reason is that nuclear radiation, one of the things it does is it suppresses the immune system. And the reason radiation suppresses your immune system is that your immune system is based on rapidly dividing cells in your bone marrow. And those are the cells that divide and they create the white blood cells that then are the backbone of your immune system. And radiation affects rapidly dividing cells more than cells that aren't rapidly dividing. And the reason of that is that cell division is kind of a messy process. You have to open up the nucleus and spread out all the DNA before you copy it and then, sort of close it all back up again. And while it's all sort of spread out, laying around on the floor, so to speak, if a radioactive particle comes tromping through, it will mess up all that DNA. It'll knock stuff out of order. It'll knock chunks out of a chromosome, and basically those cells are very susceptible to dying or mutating or causing cancer. And so the bone marrow cells are the most sensitive in that manner, and so it's not a surprise that the nuke workers may have had suppressed immune systems, and that's what made them susceptible to COVID. And so we keep seeing these connections, and that's one of the most beautiful and the most scary things about ecology. I mean, we had the connection between nuclear pollution and climate change, and now we have a connection between nuclear radiation and the COVID virus. Everything is connected, and the more you study ecology, the clearer this becomes, and the more awesome and amazing. All right. Well, that is about all the eco news I had, and I was kind of hoping Rebecca would have been able to join us, and because she really brings a lot to the show. I really love having her as a co-host. But somehow we've managed to press on together, and now we have come to the letter from the future. This is the letter from my great-great-granddaughter, Marie I., who 2 weeks ago had a terrible tragedy happen. She's living about 300 years in the future and sending me letters every week. It's very nice. So here's this week's letter. Dear Great-Great-Grandpa, it appears that I am out of danger. Medicine has made remarkable advances from your time. Each of us has a bank of organs that was grown from our own stem cells waiting at the local hospital. So when my kidneys failed from the radiation exposure, the doctors were able to transplant new ones immediately. Similarly, I've already had a bone marrow transplant. My original bone marrow cells were killed by the gamma radiation, and if I had lived in your time, I would probably be doomed to die from infection or hemorrhaging. I'm not out of the woods yet. My old marrow cells are still dying, and the new ones haven't had time to repopulate. I'm tired all the time and terribly, terribly depressed. Yeah, there's actually some tear stains on the letter this week. Michael is in a coma. He received a much higher dose of radiation than me because he actually ran towards the nuclear wastes in order to close the container. He and the 2 workers who hooked up the lid to back up to the crane saved all of us. The 2 workers died right away. Michael might still die, even with all our advanced medicine. He had a few hours where he was lucid before going into the coma. He made a video and told me that he loved me and asked me to marry him. I'm so numb, I can't even think about what happened. The one thing I don't have to think about anymore is Bill Ryderson. When he got news that I had lost the baby, he seemed to take it well, but later that day, when no one was looking, he went out onto the Martian surface through an airlock without a pressure suit. He went out barefoot because his colony was near the equator. It was about 40 degrees that day. He actually made it about a quarter mile up and over a low hill before succumbing to the near vacuum and asphyxiating. He got his wish. He died with the Martian soil between his fingers. Can't write anymore, GGG. Can't think. I am getting better. Still love you, Marie I. Well, that was a sad letter from the future. But it's, that's something we of this time need to remember, is that we are setting up stories like that in the future, because by creating these terrible long-term environmental problems, and it's our responsibility to change that. It's our responsibility to fix these problems before we pass this on to the next generation. All right, 8:55. The show is almost over, and we have time for a call, especially since we didn't have Rebecca with us today. We would be happy to take a call. And I just want to say that if you haven't gotten out into nature yet, if you are just sort of hunkering down in your house and watching tons of television or Netflix, I think that you're missing a great opportunity, because the air is cleaner than I ever remember it being here in Ohio. It's approaching the air quality of like the Adirondack Mountains that I used to hike in when I was a kid. The air is clean. The sky is bluer than most of the time than probably you've ever seen it. Get out into Wood County Park or some other local park. I noticed that they've closed a lot of the state parks, but there's other places you can go, other things you can do. For example, my wife and I went to the graveyard, the cemetery in Perrysburg, and interestingly enough, there was nobody there. We had the whole place to ourselves, so we were able to get our walk in. Actually, Carol and I are losing weight. We're walking every other day because we're not going out to restaurants. We're eating very well. We're cooking our own food most of the time. There's all these things that are happening, like the drop in pollution, like getting into better shape and so forth. It's not good that we're all cloistered because of COVID, but at least we can take out of this time, at least we can take out of this terrible event the ideas that a better life is possible. We can have a world without pollution. We can, get in good shape and eat healthy foods. We can do all these things, and we really should. I've been talking lately about the difference between dystopias and utopias, because a lot of television shows are based on a dystopian future, zombies have taken over, or a lot of times there's a horrible dictator running everything. And we need to focus more on utopias. We need to focus more on the stories, the ideas of a world, a future where everything is actually working well, that things are functioning, because as long as we keep looking at these models of dysfunctional societies, I think we're going to head in that direction. So just picture in your mind, think of yourself a way that society can function and work towards that society, Be a citizen of that society, of a society with a strong democracy and with clean air and clean water, and a society that values its members and doesn't discriminate against people, and a society that's green, a society that's functional, a society that's sustainable. And if you keep doing that, I'll keep doing that. Next week, hopefully, Rebecca will be back and help us keep doing that. But thank you so much for listening. That's this week's edition of For a Green Future. This is Joe DeMare signing off.
Give us all we need to make this country